The sun of the home world burned purple above the holy arena. It was a color that had never gotten used to, even after 3 years of serving as Earth's ambassador to this distant empire. She stood in the diplomatic box, her hands gripping the stone railing so hard that her knuckles turned white. Below her, 50,000 citizens filled the ancient seats, their gray skin shimmering under the strange light. They had come to watch a human die. Wanted to scream. She wanted to jump down into the arena and fight, but she was surrounded by guards and her communication device had been taken away. The High Council had made sure she could do nothing but watch. In the center of the arena stood. He was a soldier, one of the best Earth had ever produced. He had been captured 3 weeks ago during a border dispute that had gone terribly wrong. Now he stood alone on the white sand, his hands bound behind his back, wearing nothing but torn prison clothes. His black hair was messy and dirty. There was dried blood on his face, but when looked at his eyes, she saw no fear. That scared her more than anything else. They were a proud species. They stood 7 feet tall on average, with 4 arms and skin that changed color based on their emotions. Their empire stretched across 40 star systems. They had ruled this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years, and they believed with absolute certainty that they were chosen by the gods. High Priest walked onto the arena floor. He was old, even by standards. His skin had faded to a pale gray that never changed color anymore. He wore robes of pure gold, and on his head sat the crown of divine truth, a circle of metal that supposedly allowed him to speak with the gods themselves. The crowd fell silent as raised all 4 of his arms. Citizens of the Eternal Empire, his voice boomed across the arena, amplified by ancient technology. Today we gather to witness divine justice. Today we show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge the chosen people of the gods. Felt sick. This was not justice. This was murder dressed up in religious clothing. The human before you, continued, pointing at, killed 17 of our sacred warriors. He invaded our holy space. He spat upon our traditions, and for this he will face the flame of judgment. A door opened at the far end of the arena. 2 soldiers walked out, carrying between them a massive weapon. It was the holy plasma cannon, a device that they believed was given to them by their gods at the beginning of time. It fired a bolt of plasma so hot that it could melt steel in an instant. Had seen recordings of executions before. The plasma bolt moved fast, but not too fast. The victim always had time to see it coming. They always had time to feel fear before they were burned to nothing. The sacred texts tell us, said, his voice becoming almost singing, that no mortal creature can touch the divine flame. This is the first law of the universe. This is the truth that separates the chosen from the worthless. Stood perfectly still. He watched the soldiers set up the cannon. He watched them aim it at his chest. His face showed nothing. Remembered the day she had first met him. It was at a military base on the moon of Europa. She had been giving a speech about peaceful relations with alien species. He had asked her a question afterward, a simple question about whether she truly believed peace was possible. Sometimes, she had answered, peace requires showing strength first. He had smiled at that. It was a sad smile, the smile of someone who had seen too much violence. I hope you're right, he had said. I really do. Now he was going to die and could not save him. The soldiers finished preparing the cannon. One of them looked at High Priest and nodded. The weapon was ready. Turned to face the crowd. Let this be a lesson to all who watch. Let this be a warning to the humans and their pitiful alliance. The gods have chosen us. The gods protect us. And the gods will destroy all who stand against us. He raised his hand. Closed her eyes, she could not watch. But then something strange happened. The crowd began to murmur. The murmur grew into whispers. The whispers grew into gasps. Opened her eyes and looked down at the arena. Had moved. His hands were no longer bound. The rope lay in pieces on the sand behind him, did not understand how he had broken it. Rope was made from a material stronger than steel cables. He stood now with his feet apart, his arms at his sides. He had turned to face the plasma cannon directly. His eyes were focused on the barrel of the weapon. "Fire," commanded, his voice uncertain for the first time. The soldier hesitated. "I said fire," screamed. The soldier pressed the trigger. The plasma bolt erupted from the cannon. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, a ball of burning energy that glowed white and blue. It moved across the arena toward, leaving a trail of heated air behind it. Watched in horror, there was nothing anyone could do. The bolt would hit in less than a second. He would be burned to ashes. All that would be left was smoke and memory. But did not run. He did not dodge. He did not even flinch. Instead, he raised his hand and stepped forward. He stepped toward the bolt. The crowd screamed, grabbed the railing and leaned forward, not believing what she was seeing. Time seemed to slow down. She could see every detail, the sweat on his forehead, the focus in his eyes, the way his muscles tensed as he reached out. His hand made contact with the plasma bolt. And everything changed. The plasma bolt was the hottest thing in the galaxy. That was what they believed. Their sacred text said that the divine flame burned at the temperature of a star's heart. Nothing could survive its touch. Nothing could even come close without being turned to ash. His hand wrapped around it. The arena went completely silent. 50,000 stopped breathing at the same moment. Even the wind seemed to die, as if the planet itself was shocked by what it was seeing. Held the plasma bolt in his right hand. His arm was stretched out in front of him. His fingers were closed around the ball of burning energy. Smoke rose from his palm. The smell of burned skin filled the air. His face twisted with pain, but his hand did not open. He did not let go. High Priest stumbled backward. His golden robes dragged in the sand. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. For the first time in his 300 years of life, he had no prayers to speak. In the diplomatic box, felt her legs go weak. She grabbed the railing to keep herself from falling. Her mind was racing, trying to understand what she was seeing. Plasma burns at over 10,000 degrees. No human should be able to touch it. No human should even be able to get close to it. But was holding it like it was nothing more than a hot coal. She remembered something from her training a long time ago. A scientist had explained to her the difference between humans and other species in the galaxy. Humans, he had said, were unique. They evolved on a planet that was constantly trying to kill them. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, extreme temperatures. Earth was a death world, and humans had survived by becoming impossibly tough. Our bodies, the scientist had said, can do things that other species think are impossible. We can push through pain. We can ignore injuries that would kill anyone else. We can adapt to almost anything. Had not believed him then. She had thought he was exaggerating, trying to make humans seem special. But now, watching hold a ball of plasma in his bare hand, she understood. The scientist had not been exaggerating at all. Turned slowly. His movements were calm and controlled. He looked at the soldier who had fired the cannon. The soldier dropped his weapon and ran. He did not look back. Then looked at High Priest. Skin had turned pure white. In culture, white skin meant absolute terror. It was the color of someone who was facing death and knew it. The High Priest fell to his knees in the sand. His crown of divine truth slipped from his head and rolled away. Hal whispered. His voice was so quiet that only could hear him. The sacred texts, the divine flame, no mortal can. Walked toward him. Each step left a burned footprint in the sand. The heat from the plasma bolt was so intense that the air around him shimmered, but his eyes were cold. Your gods, said, are not as powerful as you think. He stopped in front of. The old priest looked up at him with eyes full of fear and confusion. His whole world was falling apart. Everything he had believed for 300 years was wrong. In the stands, the citizens were starting to react. Some of them were crying, some of them were praying, some of them were simply staring, unable to look away. One young in the front row had fainted. Finally found her voice. "Guards," she shouted, "release me. I demand to speak to the arena master." The guards around her did not respond. They were too busy watching the scene below. Their weapons hung uselessly at their sides. They had been trained to fight enemies, not miracles. In the arena, raised the plasma bolt higher. It was getting dimmer now, slowly losing its energy. But it was still bright enough to hurt the eyes, still hot enough to burn through metal. "You told your people that humans were weak," said Tu. "You told them we were animals, creatures without souls. You told them your gods wanted us destroyed." Said nothing, he could not speak. "But you were wrong." His voice grew louder. "We are not weak, we are not animals, and your gods did not create us." He looked up at the crowd. 50,000 pairs of eyes stared back at him. "We created ourselves," said. "On a world of fire and ice, of storms and earthquakes, of predators and plagues, we fought, we survived, we evolved, and we became something that your gods never expected." He squeezed the plasma bolt. It flickered and crackled. More smoke rose from his hand. His skin was black and burned now, but still he did not let go. "We became survivors." Felt tears on her cheeks. She did not know when she had started crying. She watched standing there, a symbol of everything that humans had ever been. Stubborn, strong, impossible. A voice rang out from somewhere in the crowd. A young voice, probably a child. "Is he a god?" The question echoed across the arena. Other voices picked it up. The whispers became a chorus. "Is he a god? Is the human a god?" Heard them, he smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had paid a terrible price for this moment. "I am not a god," he said. "I am just a man, a human man, and if I can do this." He turned back to, "Then maybe your gods are not as powerful as you thought. Maybe the limits they spoke of were lies. Maybe." He did not finish. The plasma bolt finally died. The light faded. The heat disappeared. All that was left was a small ball of cooling metal in its ruined hand. He dropped it in the sand. "Maybe you have been lied to about everything." Began to cry. His tears were black, the color of shame in culture. He had dedicated his life to the gods. He had killed in their name. He had ordered the deaths of thousands. And now a human prisoner had proven that his entire faith was built on lies. Turned away from him. He walked across the arena toward the diplomatic box where stood. His hand hung at his side, burned and broken. His face was pale from pain and blood loss. But his eyes were still clear. The guards at the gate did not try to stop him. They simply stepped aside and let him pass. As he disappeared into the shadows of the arena tunnel, 50,000 sat in silence, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Their world would never be the same. The silence lasted for 17 minutes. Counted every second. She stood in the diplomatic box, surrounded by guards who had forgotten she existed. They were all staring at the empty arena below, at the spot where had stood, at the burned footprints in the white sand. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The entire arena seemed frozen in time. Then slowly, the sounds began. It started with crying. A female in the middle section began to weep loudly. Her 4 arms wrapped around herself as she rocked back and forth. Her skin shifted through colors so fast that it was hard to watch. Green for confusion, blue for sadness, white for fear. Other voices joined her. The arena filled with the sound of 50,000 people trying to understand the impossible. Some were praying, some were screaming, some were simply repeating the same words over and over. "It cannot be, it cannot be, it cannot be." On the arena floor, High Priest had not moved. He was still on his knees, his golden robes covered in sand. His crown of divine truth lay nearby, forgotten. His eyes were open, but they saw nothing. His mind had gone somewhere else, somewhere safe, where the universe still made sense. A young priest ran out from the religious section of the stands. His name was, and he had served under for 60 years. He rushed to his master's side and grabbed him by the shoulders. "Your Holiness," shook desperately. "Your Holiness, please, you must say something, the people need you." Did not respond. His lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. Looked around wildly. He was trained for ceremonies, not emergencies. He had spent his life studying ancient texts and performing rituals. Nothing in his education had prepared him for this moment. "Someone help," he screamed. "Please, someone help the high priest." More priests ran onto the arena floor. They surrounded, trying to wake him, trying to make him speak. But the old priest was gone. His body was there, but his spirit had retreated into a place where plasma bolts could not be caught by human hands. In the stands, the chaos was growing. Citizens were pushing against each other, trying to leave, trying to get closer, trying to do something. The guards were overwhelmed. They had never dealt with anything like this before. Saw her chance. The guards around her were distracted, watching the madness below. She quietly stepped backward toward the exit of the diplomatic box. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. A hand grabbed her arm. She spun around, ready to fight. But it was not a guard. It was a young female, maybe 15 years old by human counting. Her skin was pale blue, the color of confusion. Her eyes were wide and wet. "Please," the young said. "Please, human, I need to know. Was it real? Did your friend really catch the divine flame?" Looked at her. She saw fear in those alien eyes, but also something else. Hope, curiosity, a desire to understand. "Yes," said quietly, "it was real." "But how?" The young's voice cracked. "The sacred texts say, my teachers told me, my parents always said." She could not finish. Her whole life she had been told that certain things were impossible. The laws of the universe were fixed. The gods had set the limits. Mortals could not cross them. And now she had seen a human break those limits with his bare hand. Put her own hand on the young's shoulder. "I know this is hard," she said, "but sometimes the things we believe are wrong. Sometimes we have to learn new truths." But if the priests were wrong about this, the young looked at her with desperate eyes. What else were they wrong about? It was the question that everyone in the arena was asking, whether they said it out loud or not. If the divine flame could be touched, then the first law of the universe was false. And if the first law was false, then maybe the second law was false too. And the third. And the fourth. Maybe everything was false. Gently pulled her arm free. "I have to go," she said. "I have to find my friend." She ran toward the exit. Behind her, she heard the young calling after her, but she did not stop. She had to find before someone else did. The tunnels beneath the arena were dark and empty. Everyone had gone up to watch the execution. No one had expected anyone to come back down alive. Ran through the shadows, following the burned marks on the stone floor. They led her deeper into the arena's basement, past storage rooms and prison cells, past ancient statues of gods that seemed to watch her with disapproving eyes. She found in a small room at the end of the tunnel. He was sitting on the floor, his back against the wall. His right hand lay in his lap, burned so badly that could see bone through the blackened skin. His eyes were closed. His breathing was slow and shallow. She ran to him and dropped to her knees. "Can you hear me?" He opened his eyes slowly. They were still clear, still focused. A small smile appeared on his lips. "Ambassador," he said, his voice was weak but steady. "I hope I did not cause too much diplomatic trouble." Laughed even though tears were streaming down her face. "You idiot," she said. "You absolute idiot, you could have died." "I know," he looked down at his ruined hand, "but I had to show them." "Show them what?" He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was serious. That limits are just beliefs, that the impossible is only impossible until someone does it, that they're gods. He coughed, and a little blood appeared on his lips. Their gods are not as powerful as they claim. Tore a piece of cloth from her dress and pressed it against his hand. The bleeding had mostly stopped, but the damage was severe. He would need medical attention soon, or he would lose more than just his hand. "We need to get you out of here," she said. "Can you walk?" "I think so." He tried to stand, but his legs gave out, caught him before he could fall. "Lean on me," she said. "We'll go together." They moved slowly through the tunnels, weight heavy on shoulder. Above them they could hear the continued chaos in the arena. The screaming had not stopped. If anything, it was getting louder. "What do you think will happen now?" asked. Was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that would remember for the rest of her life. "Revolution." They emerged from the tunnel into the purple sunlight. The streets around the arena were already filling with citizens, spilling out of the gates like water from a broken dam. Their skins were all colors of the rainbow, emotions mixing and changing with every second. And everywhere heard the same question being asked. If the gods lied about the flame, what else did they lie about? The answer would shake the empire to its very foundation. 3 days passed. The capital city burned with questions. Stood on the balcony of the human embassy, watching the crowds gather in the streets below. They came from all over the planet, from small villages and large cities, from farms and factories and schools. They carried signs and banners. They chanted slogans that would have been considered heresy just a week ago. "Tell us the truth, tell us the truth." The government had tried to control the situation. They had sent soldiers to the streets. They had closed the temples. They had arrested dozens of priests who were accused of spreading lies, but nothing worked. The people had seen what happened in the arena. They had seen a human catch the divine flame. And they wanted answers. Inside the embassy, lay in a medical bed. Human doctors had arrived the day after the execution, brought by a fast ship from the nearest colony world. They had done what they could for his hand, but the damage was too severe. The hand was gone now, replaced by a temporary bandage that covered the stump at his wrist. He would get a robotic replacement eventually. Human technology was good at that, but for now he had to heal the old-fashioned way. Visited him every few hours. She brought news from the city, from the government, from the other ambassadors who were all scrambling to understand what was happening. "The High Council has requested a meeting," she said on the 3rd day. "They want to talk to you." Was sitting up in bed, his left hand holding a cup of water. He looked tired, but his eyes were still sharp. "What do they want?" "I'm not sure." Sat down in a chair beside his bed. "I think they want to understand. The religious leaders are demanding that you be declared a demon. The scientists are demanding that you be studied. The common people are demanding that you be declared a hero." Laughed softly. "I am none of those things." "I know, but you have to tell them something. The empire is falling apart. If you don't speak, the violence will get worse." She was right. The news reports showed riots in 7 major cities. Temples had been set on fire. Priests had been attacked in the streets. The old order was collapsing, and nothing new had risen to take its place. Looked out the window at the purple sky. "Do you know why I did it?" he asked. "No," shook her head. "I have been asking myself that question for 3 days. I did it because I was tired of lies." He set down his water cup and turned to face her fully. "When I was captured, they told me many things. They told me that humans were inferior. They told me that our species was an accident, a mistake of evolution that would soon be corrected. They told me that their gods had created the universe with certain rules, and that humans were breaking those rules simply by existing." His voice became harder. "And then they brought me to the arena to kill me in front of their people, to to show everyone that humans could be destroyed like any other enemy, to prove that their gods were still in control. He looked at his bandaged arm, at the place where his hand used to be. I decided to prove them wrong. Was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that everyone wanted answered. But how did you do it? The plasma, it should have killed you instantly. Smiled. Do you know what makes humans different from every other species in the galaxy? Our adaptability. More than that, he leaned forward. We evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill us. Every day was a battle for survival, hot, cold, wet, dry, predators, diseases, natural disasters. We faced them all. I know the theory. It's not just theory. His voice became intense. Our bodies learned something that other species never had to learn. Our bodies learned to ignore limits. He pointed at his bandaged arm. When I grabbed that plasma bolt, my skin burned instantly. The pain was more than anything I had ever experienced. Every nerve in my body was screaming at me to let go, to run away, to surrender. He looked directly into his eyes. But I didn't let go, because that is what humans do. We push through. We endure. We refuse to accept limits that others say cannot be broken. So it was willpower. Partly, but also biology. Leaned back against his pillow. Human muscles can generate force far beyond their normal limits when we are in danger. Human nerves can be trained to ignore pain signals. Human skin can regenerate from burns that would kill other species. He closed his eyes. We are not stronger than they. We are not smarter than them. We are not better than them. But we are different. We were forged by a death world, and that made us something that their gods never planned for. Sat in silence, thinking about his words. She had always known that humans were tough, but she had never really understood what that meant until now. The belief that the divine flame was untouchable, she said slowly, because their gods told them so. Yes, but their gods never met humans. Exactly, opened his eyes. Their entire religion was built on the assumption that certain things were impossible, but those assumptions were wrong, and now that everyone has seen the proof. He did not need to finish the sentence. Stood up. I will tell the High Council that you will speak to them tomorrow. Thank you. She walked to the door, then stopped and looked back. What are you going to tell them? He was quiet for a long moment. The sounds of the crowds outside filled the silence. Thousands of voices, all asking the same questions, all demanding the same truths. I am going to tell them what I told you, he said finally. That limits are not laws, that impossible is just a word, and that their gods, whoever they were, did not know everything. That will destroy their religion. No, shook his head slowly, it will set their people free. Left the room, her mind spinning with thoughts. She had come to this planet to build peace between humans and she had never expected to witness the death of a religion instead. But sometimes she realized peace required truth. And the truth was that the gods had lied. Outside the embassy, the crowds continued to grow. The chanting grew louder, the signs grew bigger, and somewhere in the city, the first new temple was being built. It was not a temple to the old gods. It was a temple to the truth. The Great Hall of the High Council was the oldest building in the capital city. It had been built 10,000 years ago, when the first emperor had united the planet. Its walls were made of black stone that never aged. Its ceiling was painted with images of the gods, their four-armed forms reaching down toward the mortal world. Stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by the most powerful leaders in the empire. There were 12 of them, the High Counselors. They sat on raised chairs arranged in a half-circle, their gray skin showing various shades of blue and green, confusion, uncertainty, fear. Some of them had watched the execution from private viewing rooms. Others had only seen the recordings that were now spreading across the entire galaxy. All of them were looking at He was something from a nightmare. Stood nearby, in the section reserved for foreign ambassadors. She was not allowed to speak during the council meeting, but she could watch, and she could be ready to help if anything went wrong. The head of the council, a female named Cora, raised one of her 4 hands to call for silence. The murmuring in the hall stopped immediately. "Human," Cora said, her voice echoing through the ancient chamber. "You have been brought here to answer questions. You are not on trial, but your answers will determine the future relationship between your species and our empire." Nodded, he stood straight despite his injuries. His bandaged arm hung at his side. He was wearing clean clothes that had provided simple black fabric that made him look almost like a priest. "I understand," he said. "I will answer honestly." Cora looked at a document in her hands. "First question. How did you break free from your restraints? Prison rope is designed to hold prisoners 10 times stronger than a human." "I did not break the rope," replied. "I worked at the knots for 3 weeks, every night while the guards thought I was sleeping. Human fingers are more flexible than fingers. The knots were designed for prisoners, not human ones." The council members exchanged glances. This answer made sense to them. It was clever but not supernatural. "Second question." Cora looked up from her document. "How did you survive touching the divine flame? Our scientists have analyzed the plasma bolt. It burned at over 15,000 degrees. No organic tissue should be able to withstand that temperature." This was the question everyone wanted answered. Took a deep breath. "May I speak freely?" "You may." "Your scientists are correct. No ordinary tissue can survive that temperature, and I did not survive it. My hand was destroyed." He raised his bandaged arm. "But I did not need to survive. I only needed to hold on long enough to prove a point." "A point?" One of the other counselors leaned forward. His name was, and he was known for his sharp mind. "What point could be worth sacrificing your hand?" "The point that limits are not as fixed as you believe." Looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of each counselor. "Your religion teaches that the divine flame cannot be touched by mortal creatures. This is written in your sacred texts as an absolute truth, a law of the universe that cannot be broken." He paused. "But I touched it, I held it, and while it destroyed my hand, it did not destroy me. So the law was not absolute, the truth was not complete, the limit was." He searched for the right word. The limit was a belief, not a fact. The hall was completely silent. The counselors stared at with expressions that mixed anger and wonder. Then Cora spoke again. Her voice was quieter now. "You are saying that our gods lied to us." "I am saying that whoever wrote your sacred texts did not know everything." Chose his words carefully. "They may have been wise, they may have been powerful, but they did not know about humans. They did not know about death worlds. They did not know that the universe could create creatures that refused to accept limits." He looked up at the painted ceiling, at the images of the gods. "Your gods may have been real, I do not know, but the rules they gave you were not complete, and now your people have seen the proof." A long silence followed. The counselors whispered among themselves, watched anxiously, trying to read the mood of the room. Some of them looked angry, some looked frightened. But some, she noticed, looked almost relieved. Finally, Cora raised her hand again. "One final question, human. You could have escaped from the arena. You could have run when you broke your ropes. But instead, you chose to stand there and catch the plasma bolt. You chose to sacrifice your hand for a demonstration. Why?" Was quiet for a moment. When he answered, his voice was soft but clear. "Because I wanted your people to be free." Cora's eyes widened. "Free? What do you mean?" "I have studied your history," said. "Though we're not always ruled by priests. 10,000 years ago, before the gods supposedly appeared, your people were explorers, scientists, dreamers. You built ships that crossed the galaxy. You discovered technologies that still amaze other species today." He took a step forward. But then your religion took control, and your religion taught you that certain things were impossible, that certain limits could not be broken, that certain questions could not be asked. And slowly, over thousands of years, your people stopped exploring, stopped dreaming, stopped trying to do the impossible. His voice grew stronger. You became afraid of breaking the rules. You became afraid of your own potential. You became prisoners of your beliefs. He looked directly at Cora. I caught the plasma bolt because I wanted to show your people that the prison was not real. The limits were not real. The impossible was only impossible because no one had tried to do it. He smiled, a tired but genuine smile. I wanted to wake them up. The hall remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, one of the younger counselors began to laugh. It was not a mocking laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had just understood a great joke, a joke that had been played on their entire species for 10,000 years. Other counselors joined in. Soon the entire hall was filled with a strange mixture of laughter and tears. The emotions were too big to contain. They had just learned that everything they believed was wrong, and somehow, impossibly, that was the best news they had ever heard. Because if the old limits were lies, then new possibilities were everywhere. Felt tears streaming down her own face. She watched standing in the center of the hall, a simple human soldier who had changed the course of an entire civilization. He was not a god. He was not a demon. He was just a man who had refused to accept limits. And that, she realized, was the most powerful thing of all. 1 month later, the first human joint expedition was launched toward the unexplored regions of the galaxy. The ship was named New Dawn. Its crew included both humans and, working together for the first time in history. On the hull of the ship, in both human English and script, was written a single sentence. There are no limits, only beliefs. The revolution had begun. And the gods, wherever they were, finally fell silent.